All right, guys, we are going to finish our Worm's Eye View snowman today. We're going to draw it large on our white paper. So you've got your sketchbooks that you have your reference drawings, your thumbnail sketches from last time. Pick the composition that you like the best to enlarge on the white paper. We're going to start with a pencil first. Draw it in with pencil. Outline it with the black marker. I want to remind you, with the black marker, see the nice pointed tip? Treat the black marker with respect. Draw lightly. Have a light touch with the black marker. You do not have to put so much pressure on the marker that it mashes it down and creates a dull tip. We want to keep that nice pointed tip. All right, so treat the marker with respect. Don't push really hard. Light touch. When you're done, please make sure the lid goes back on nice and tight and put it back in the container. All right. A next fun thing to do with watercolor is to use a white crayon to create some wax resist. So you can see on this one here how I drew some stars, the moon with the white crayon, some maybe snowflake shapes, and that's a fun way to get some extra detail in. So you can use the white crayon, push with some pretty good pressure when you draw with it to make some shapes back there if you'd like for wax resist. We are not going to paint the snowman. We want him to be white. The last step we'll do next week is we're going to come back and put some shading on our snowman with some colored pencils. So do not paint your snowman. He's going to stay white. All right, reminder, when we use these watercolor paints, keep them in the tray. Take the lids off carefully. Hold the jar and then pull the lid off. Please keep the lids in the container. We use that container to prevent accidents like spilling, because then it'll spill just in the container. But please try not to spill the paint. And then after all the lids are off, put the container in the middle of the table so we can all share. I also like to have a rag handy that we can use to dab our paintbrush or clean up accidents if we have to. But hopefully we won't have any accidents. All right. Art Minion would also get a small paintbrush for everyone and a large paintbrush for everyone. And of course, a cup of water. The cup of water, again, in the middle, but don't fill it too full. Only a couple inches in case it spills. All right. I like to start with the small shapes first. So I'm going to use my small paintbrush and paint in the smaller shapes. A few things with watercolor paint. We want to keep these paints pure. So when you change colors, please rinse the paintbrush. Paintbrush goes for a swim at the bottom of the cup. Around a couple times he wants to touch the bottom of the pool, or the cup rather. And then he's nice and clean. Then you can dab it on the rag. When you get your paint, just put a little bit of paint on the brush. You don't have to put the brush and the paint all the way up to here. Just a little bit on the tip. And then we'll start painting. If your color is too dark, you can always make it lighter by pulling some of the pigment or color off. So what you can do is take the rag, you can dab your paintbrush on the rag, come back before it dries, and see how if I come back over that color and paint right back on top with the cleaned paintbrush, how the color lightens up, because I'm pulling some of the pigment off. Also, what we want to avoid in watercolor painting is the paint puddling up. Let's see, I'll paint his nose and show you. If your paint pools up too much and you just have a big puddle of watery paint, what will happen when I lift my paper up? Oh yeah, it's gonna drip. Look at all that puddle there. It's gonna drip. We don't want that. So when you see that, again, dab your paintbrush, make your paintbrush clean, dab it and dry it off, and then come back in here and pick that puddle up. Dab. Might take 2 or 3 times, but you have to be patient. Watercolor paint is not as forgiving as tempera. You have to be patient. The next tip I want to tell you is when you're painting with watercolor paint, If I just painted this one and it's nice and wet, I probably don't want to paint right next to it until this one dries, because the wet and wet paint will connect together and bleed into one another. So wait for one area to dry. Move to a shape that's not near it and paint that shape. And if you are painting correctly and you're not getting color puddling up, then it doesn't take very long to dry. It'll only take 5-10 minutes or so, and then you can paint right next to it. So now I can come in here and paint next to the red, because it's dry, with my purple. And then I am going to do the sky. Now, again, that's a kind of puddling up there, so I'm going to get a little bit. If I want it darker, now that the red's dry, I can come back over it and do a second coat. This is called glazing. Maybe I only want it darker right along the edge. See how it darkens up with the second coat? You can also do glazing techniques with different colors. So see how his hat is yellow? Maybe I'm going to put a little bit of blue on that hat. And what color does blue and yellow make? It makes it green. So putting some blue on top kind of makes a bluish green because it mixes with yellow. The colors glaze together. Glazing only works if the color on bottom is dry. The background. When we do the background, you guys can try a technique called wet on wet. So what you can do is take your larger paintbrush and just take some water at first. Make sure the water is relatively clean. And just paint with the water. Then you can dip the paintbrush, again, just the tip, dip just the tip of the paintbrush. And then put the color on top of the painted water and see how it bleeds and kind of blends in with the water. That is a really good way to paint a large area. And there's my wax resist showing up. All right, well, have fun painting your snowmen in, artists. I can't wait to see what they look like.